Things like thought transference, mind-to-mind communication, it all sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But what if I told you that over a century ago, some of the world's most serious scientists were actually trying to prove it was real? Let's dive into the surprisingly scientific origins of telepathy. This is the question that really started it all. Could one mind actually talk to another, bypassing all our known senses? It might seem like a fantasy to us now, but for some of the sharpest thinkers of the late 19th century, this was a very real and very profound scientific mystery they wanted to solve. So, how did this pretty radical idea go from being just a philosophical whisper to a full-blown scientific question? Let's find out. And you really have to picture this scene here. This wasn't happening on the fringes of society. We're talking about respected European scholars and scientists sitting in their studies who started to wonder if there was more to the mind than meets the eye. The question they were asking was a huge deal. It challenged the very foundations of what they thought they knew about human consciousness. And of course, if you're going to study something, you've got to give it a name, right? Well, this is when the term telepathy was coined. It comes from two Greek words, tele, which means distant, and pathos, which means feeling. So it literally means distant feeling, the idea of perceiving thoughts or emotions from afar. So who were these brave pioneers? Who were the people who decided to take this idea from just a debate and actually bring it into the laboratory? Well, let's meet the first mind investigators. Leading the charge was a guy named Frederick W.H. Myers. He and his colleagues founded a formal organization to tackle this question head-on, the Society for Psychical Research. And I want to be clear, this wasn't some kind of casual hobby club. No, this was a serious, scholarly attempt to apply real scientific rigor to these, well, unexplained phenomena. And you can see just how fast this whole thing took off. Those initial questions in the late 19th century led directly to the Society's founding in London in 1882. And pretty much right away, their work started making waves, kicking off huge debates within what was then the brand new field of psychology. Okay, so they've got the question, they've got the team, but how on earth do you even begin to study something so elusive? Well, they attempted to take all those personal stories and anecdotes and drag them into the bright, harsh light of a scientific experiment. And their approach was actually pretty methodical. First, the goal. Stop just collecting stories and start systematically investigating them. Second, the method. Use the cornerstones of science, really structured observation and meticulous documentation of everything. And finally, the test itself. They would actually try to transmit very specific things, like images, emotions, even single words between two people in different rooms. So, the million-dollar question. Did it work? Did they finally prove the existence of telepathy? Well, let's just say the answer wasn't a simple yes or no. The verdict was, and kind of still is, pretty ambiguous. And this is where you really see the gap between their ambition and the reality. Their goal was huge, to scientifically prove thought transmission, period. The result? Well, they never found that definitive, repeatable proof that science demands. But, and this is a big but, their real achievement was arguably even more important. They sparked a serious, widespread debate about the very nature of consciousness itself. And they weren't just shouting into the void. They got the attention of some really big names. Influential thinkers like the psychologist William James made their point perfectly. He basically argued that just because an experience isn't usual doesn't mean we should dismiss it. In fact, he said those are exactly the kinds of experiences we should be studying to push the boundaries of what we know. So in the end, the true legacy of these early experiments wasn't really about proving telepathy at all. It was about making it okay to study the mind's more mysterious corners. They basically opened the door for future generations to seriously investigate the things we now call intuition and perception. But the story doesn't end there. Because when the human-to-human experiments hit a wall, the search for answers didn't just stop. Instead, it pivoted and took this really fascinating turn down a totally different path. Yeah, researchers started noticing something kind of strange. Animals often seem to respond to human intentions before any obvious signal was given. It made them wonder, could animals have an uncanny sensitivity to the subtle cues that we humans give off without even realizing it? And so that original quest for mind reading sort of morphed into this entirely new and honestly provocative question, one that researchers are still exploring today. Do animals perceive far more than we've ever given them credit for? The original mission may not have found exactly what it was looking for, but wow, it sure opened up a whole new world of discovery that continues to this day.